Several headlines today that again cast doubt on Labor's whole green agenda. First, the fuel giant Ampol revealing that it's a long way short of its target of 300 EV charging bays by the end of the year. They're currently sitting at just under a third of their stated goal. And it's driven not just by the slow uptake of EVs, but also the fact that the grid itself is struggling to cope with supply due to the renewables build-out. At the same time, new research from Bloomberg calculates that Australia's share of renewables needs to more than double by 2030 for Australia to reach its net zero goal. So all up, it's a mess, but no one seems willing to admit yet that the emperor's got no clothes. Well, some bloke might. He's joining me now, Sky News contributor Chris Uhlmann. Well, you can read a set of numbers, Chris. It's almost impossible to find any numbers anywhere in this whole energy debate that adds up. I'm not surprised by this, but how about you?
I'm not surprised either, and it shows that the system runs on physics and not on politics. And just to give you a couple of numbers, so right now around about 40% of the electricity on the national electricity market can be put down to weather-dependent renewable energy. We have to, in the next 6 years, double that to hit 82%. That is the government's target by 2030. We have to connect 6 gigawatts of generation every single year from now on. At the moment, we're connecting under 3 gigawatts. Physically, this process is now simply impossible to hit that kind of mark. So yes, this debate could use a whole lot more honesty in it. And I'll say this about it too, Peter, people don't understand this about the way that the energy system works, but we need to double our supply by 2050 in order to meet the kind of demand that we expect that we will have, and I think that number is probably underdone. But in order to do it with weather-dependent renewables, or mostly that way, we have to triple the amount of generation that we are going to get. So triple the amount of generation in order to get the kind of generation that we used to get. And we have to connect it with transmission lines that will run across the country and then fix up the distribution system as well. And all of that adds up.
Our major security competitors, though, Chris, they're not going down this path. I mean, they are absolutely building up their fossil fuel outputs. Look at the budget costs for Australia. Look at the engineering impossibility of what we're trying to do. Look at the backlash now in regional communities. I mean, when are we going to have an honest conversation about all of this and reset this agenda?
And Peter, that honest conversation must start with the cost of what we are proposing. And look at your bill. It's basically broken up into a number of different parts. The wholesale costs of electricity, the transmission cost of electricity, the distribution cost of electricity. At the moment, the wholesale price is on the march. That is going up no matter what they say about it being the lowest cost generation. The problem with it is it's off more often than it's on. We've made gas rare during the winter. What sets the price is gas. That drives up the wholesale price. The cost of transmission is going up because these big transmission projects that we're seeing, they're being slowed down. When they get approved, they have a regulated rate of return. So just one of them, HumeLink, will add $21 a year from now on to every single bill in New South Wales. The distribution network, and you were talking about those, the Ampol being unable to connect to the distribution network, was not designed to have two-way flows of power. Power out by solar energy and power in as it used to be. It can't cope. It will have to be rebuilt. 32% of your bill, Peter. I don't think people have any idea yet about the kinds of costs that we are talking about that will cripple those people who can't have solar power, who have to stay connected to the grid, and that includes our industries.
What keeps me awake at night, Chris, is how on earth do we pay for our future if we've got more and more people leaving private jobs to go and work for governments, if we're growing the size, as we are of our public sector payroll, if we're not exporting as much anymore, if we don't have local industries like we used to have, if we're demanding, every boondoggle under the sun to be paid for by the taxpayer, if we want big welfare, if we want the NDIS, if we want to throw billions more at national security as we should, and schools and hospitals, how the heck do we pay for our future? We had a gold mine yesterday knocked back by Tanya Plibersek, $1 billion worth of gold mine. We had the New South Wales and federal environment departments giving it the green light. We had the local Indigenous leaders giving it the green light. They're angry today, these locals, that this has been a knocked back opportunity for economic empowerment, but she gives it the kibosh because one Aboriginal group, and she won't tell us why, had issues with it over cultural sensitivities. This is a massive sovereign risk, Chris.
Yeah, Peter, and obviously in the course of doing a documentary, which I'm doing for Sky on the energy transition, we've been speaking to industry groups, and there is genuine alarm out there about this kind of thing. So in order to do mining projects, and we need a lot more mining, by the way, I don't think that's actually quite got through to people. When we're going to have this transition, it requires an enormous amount of particularly rare earth minerals. They're rare because, you know, they exist in the environment, but you've got to dig up a whole lot of ground to get them. So a lot more mining in the future. But Australia now is just behind the United States as the most litigious place in the world to do business. That message is getting out around the world. People do not want to invest here because it's getting too hard. That gold mine that you were talking about is an example about how some of the law is being weaponised against mining companies, and particularly for a green agenda, and not necessarily in the interests of the local Indigenous community, which wants and needs jobs in order to look after their community. And I'm like you, at the turn of the last century, the turn of the 20th century, Australia actually decided it would be a high wage economy, but we were a low energy cost economy. We can't be in the 21st century a high wage and a high energy cost economy. That will not add up. Nothing will be made in Australia.
I couldn't agree more, Chris.